Hey guys, it is Friday, September 17th, 2021. Right now it's just before 6 a.m. I should not be up right now, I should be sleeping. But I have been sort of contemplating, I did this very quick video last night on the Aquarian Age and how, from my perspective empirically, it's happening now. And so I have been contemplating, that, which is a really big deal, and because this energy, which I want to talk a bit more about, is really intense, and I've been contemplating it and tapping into it because I want to express it. I have studied astrology for decades, and I had, before I sort of started doing this channel, and I knew I had been guided to start doing it months ago, and I just kept putting it off. Why did I put it off? Because I got distracted with a bunch of stuff, like in real life, and I also was a bit nervous about, not because I believe I'm actually competent and informed, but I am a perfectionist at the same time, and so I don't like to do things unless I feel like I'm 110% prepared, and capable. So, that's one thing. And like I said, and then about a week ago, I kind of, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but I kind of said to God, I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And God, and I don't mean to sound like I'm like literally sitting here talking to an old guy with a long white beard, but God said to me, just tell your stories, because my life has been rich, and I'm kind of like, okay. So, here I am. I woke this morning at 5:30, which is too early. And I'm not opposed to getting up early, but it's too early because I don't actually get to sleep until after midnight. And so I've had this just insane amount of energy running through me since I started creating these blogs or vlogs or whatever they are, podcasts. Like crazy amounts of energy. And I know some of you, I know people like you're probably sitting there going like, okay, this guy is really ungrounded. And I do, the way I make money these days, or my chopping wood and carrying water, is, so I'm building some, I'm doing, it's not carpentry, it's not cabinetry, because I have done cabinet making. It's something sort of in between. And so I do physical work all day, but and I do also do grounding rituals, like frequently, like lately I've been doing them multiple times during the day, trying to keep myself grounded, because this energy that's coming through me is just insane. And I admit I'm having a hard time channeling all this energy. It's incredibly intense. But then, it got me to thinking this morning that I really needed to talk more about what this Uranus and Aquarian kind of energy is about. And so and that video I produced last night about the Aquarian Age and how it's here now, there's some things in there where I slight little misstatements and stuff like that, because again, this is all off the cuff, mostly unscripted, and so, if I could go back and make a few, but I don't have time to sit there and frig around with these videos and edit them and that would be great if I could do that, but I just don't have time because of my work, and the situation I'm in. I don't have a lot of privacy, or the level I would desire. So I just have to kind of go with it. And I don't like errors and mistakes, and because I'm a perfectionist. But the only way for me to deal with this is just to express it and put it out there. So there's a couple other things just to add to that video that I very quickly produced late last night when I was tired after a long day's work. Important things. One is I didn't really mention all of the social changes that have occurred mostly since the 1960s, at least in Western culture. And, if we think about human rights and social justice and human rights, social justice, women's rights, women's liberation, feminism and all that stuff. Now, if we look at where we are in the world right now, we're not happy because there's a lot more work to be done in all of those regards. But those issues have been up and being debated, and people have been pushing for a lot of social changes that to a system that has largely been in place for centuries, if not millennia. This is big stuff. Like, if we were to step back from it and look at the changes that have been in the works over the past, 50 years. These are huge, huge changes from an evolutionary perspective that cannot be understated in their significance. We're going sort of from a patriarchal system into one that is more egalitarian, Uranian and Aquarian. And like I said, we're not satisfied with the status quo yet, but there's been a lot of progress made, and that progress is continuing. And people, there's no question that barring some form of massive social repression, that these changes are going to continue, and we will make our way through this. And we also think about gender roles as well. Now, all these non-binary people, it's becoming much more socially accepted, and people have a degree of comfort to be able to, say, for example, if you're transgender or something like that, this is something that if you went back and put forward those kinds of ideas in the 1940s or whatever, they would probably lock you up. So you couldn't even talk about it, right? So these are also signs, I think, of this Aquarian energy and Uranian energy that are irrefutable. Also, there is now a huge environmental movement, which, again, if you went back and to the 1940s or 50s, people would just not really even understand those kinds of concepts. There was this sort of concept of dominionism where, stemming from religious culture, which was where, humanity was the center of the universe, and whatever happened, and we didn't really give a crap about nature. Well, now, we're not at a state of perfection as far as the environment is concerned, but it's stuff that is very much becoming increasingly at the forefront of people's minds and taken into consideration as we do things. We also have a situation where humanity is literally altering the global biosphere and ecosystem in the form of climate change. And so, climate change is something that's happening on a global level, Aquarian, and it is the result of us actually modifying the planet to the extent that we're actually altering weather patterns and things like that. So this is very global, and it's us influencing the planet to an extent that has never occurred before. So I would argue that also is kind of Aquarian as well. Now, we haven't reached, obviously, a point where all of these kinds of issues have been fully resolved, but they're very much in the works. So that's all, very much fits within that camp too. And I, because I was rushing with my video last night, I didn't really get into a lot of those kinds of things. But, if you continue to think about, how this Aquarian energy is manifesting, You could also argue, for example, that digital currency, like things like concepts like Bitcoin and stuff like that, cryptocurrencies, that's very kind of an Aquarian thing as well. So, you keep adding all this stuff together and you're just going like, holy crap, right? I also wanted to talk a little bit about Uranian energy because in modern astrology, Uranus represents or rules Aquarius. In older astrology, because they didn't even know that Uranus existed, it was also ruled by Saturn, which doesn't really quite fit in the same way that Uranus does. So let me talk a little bit about Uranus and how that shows up. So Uranus, when you, for example, as a person go through a significant Uranus transit, and I just had one this spring, so, it's very fresh in my mind. It's not exact right now. It's not within orb right now, but it will be again because I just had the first pass of 3 exacts because of retrogrades. Uranus, when you have a significant Uranus transit, particularly to personal planets, like Sun, Moon, Ascendant, or points, Sun, Moon, Ascendant, Mercury, Mars, these you can experience things that are really literally shocking. So, because what it'll do is it will break up existing patterns of energy or ways of being or whatever, depending on, the aspect and the planets involved. And it can be like really shocking because Uranian energy in its highest form will break up patterns of, like I said, patterns and ways of being in ways that it can be quite dramatic. And another thing about Uranus is that when these aspects in astrology or when these alignments occur and then when they're precise, it can be very sharp. So like a few years ago, I had Uranus oppose my moon 3 times over the course of like a year and a half or whatever. And on each of those occasions, something really dramatic and unexpected occurred in the relationship sphere, where you're just kind of going like, where did that come from? I didn't see that coming. It was a complete shock and surprise, and it was just unexpected. So that's how Uranian energy can manifest. It's almost like the only thing something's gonna, when you have a Uranus transit, the only thing is that something big is probably going to happen, but it's almost guaranteed that you can't predict exactly what it is because it's always surprising in some way. And that's been true throughout my life when I've had Uranus transits, and I pay attention to this stuff. Now, other people are probably experiencing these kinds of things without actually realizing what's going on because they're not studying astrology or aware of all the details of it. Let's face it, the vast majority of people do not sit around looking at their astrology charts every day like I do, and a few others. And so Uranus has, it can be shocking, it can be unexpected, it can be dramatic, it can have life-changing implications. It's kind of like getting T-boned in an intersection and you don't even see the car coming, but it's not always bad. I don't think that because I'm using that metaphor or analogy of it getting T-boned. It's just that it's unexpected and it can be really dramatic. Now, one of the other interesting things I've noticed throughout my life, when you're talking about astrology, because astrology again applies in a way that is sort of relevant to your state of consciousness, and so in evolutionary astrology, they have a concept where they talk about consensus reality, or Jeffrey Wolf Green did, which is where, there's a large segment of the population inhabits what's called consensus reality, which is where they just basically buy into this paradigm. Again, see my video on paradigms, and they don't even really know that they've bought into this or that they're experiencing this paradigm. And then there's other, you kind of go further along, and there's other groups of people who are sort of more consciously or more aware, have higher levels of self-knowledge or awareness, and you can get categorized into different groups depending on where you fit into that. Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting, I'm not sure if I've not necessarily seen this discussed in any of the literature anywhere. Doesn't mean it hasn't been, but is that if you're operating at a higher level of self-awareness or just awareness or consciousness, things tend to happen faster and more intensely. So because you're open to evolution, let's just say, you're not egoically as attached to your paradigm. So someone like me, who I spend all my time contemplating, thinking about things, I do spiritual practice and whatnot, I'm deliberately sort of opening up myself to the influence of spirit in my life, and wanting to connect with the other dimensions of myself and my being. And so I am sort of like more of an open channel for energies, and those energies therefore will come through me more readily, and the consequences can be more abrupt or extreme because I'm allowing that energy to flow, and so I can go through quite dramatic changes that can occur quite quickly because I'm not really in resistance to it, right? So actually, you're probably better off to be that way because, if you're going through certain, say, Pluto transits and you're in resistance, like your entire aspects of your life or reality can kind of blow up, and it can be quite traumatic. So it is better to sort of be in the flow as if you were in a river and you're not trying to cling to a tree at the bank and hang on. You allow yourself to flow with the river. Life tends to be easier, but you have to be open to a lot of change. So where was I going with that? There was a point to that. I think it's just that with this Uranian energy that it's going to be becoming more dominant part of our reality as the age of Aquarius intensifies, we are going to see things happen faster and faster and faster, and more, so consciousness itself and human reality itself will begin to shift very quickly. That's one of the characteristics of Uranus, is that things can happen like really fast. And so I woke up this morning at 5:30 this morning, kind of channeling that energy, and I'm just like, whoa, how do I ground all this? I just don't know. It's very intense energy, and it wants to move, and it wants to flow, and it's very dynamic. And this, I think, is what humanity itself is going to be experiencing. We're going to need to, and I'm sort of starting to get some chills here around this, we're going to need to be in a state of flow, and wow, okay, strong chills. I must be saying what Spirit woke me up and wanted me to talk about. We need to be to kind of let go of our limiting beliefs about reality, because reality itself is going to start shifting very, very, very quickly. There's also another aspect of this as well that's kind of related, and I think, and some other people have talked about this, and I have certainly been aware of it, experiencing it more intensely myself, which is that manifestation, or the act of taking a thought form and having it manifest in your life, is happening faster. So we have to, therefore, ideally, I think we want to be more conscious or aware of what we're thinking and because we're going to be manifesting whatever those energies are that we are, because our minds are very powerful. Whatever we are thinking about or concentrating on is going to materialize in reality a lot faster than it did in the past. A lot faster. And it could be exponentially faster, which is a very significant statement if we take the term exponential and apply it literally. That, I think, is really what the people in the spiritual community need to be aware of, that, like I said, things can happen extremely quickly, and that will probably apply on consensus level of reality too. So I think that now how do we stay grounded in that energy? I don't know. I'm definitely having been having difficulty lately staying grounded, and even though I do my sort of little rituals and routines for staying grounded all the time, and I'm actually doing physical work too, so it's not like I'm just vegetating. I'm expressing that. It's probably going to be important to be drinking lots of water, eating healthily. You know, like I've said before, in my case, I might actually be better off outside the city where I'm not being bombarded with other people's energetic influences. But these energies are really intense. As I've also said before, I tend to be of kind of a bit of a barometer, like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. And I can give tons of examples about that in my life. And so I think if I'm experiencing this, a lot of people are going to be experiencing this in the not too distant future, potentially, likely. So change is going to be coming, and it's going to be coming way faster in some ways than we understand or realize or expect. And it's also probably going to be surprising in many ways. Like there's probably going to be things that will happen that nobody even predicted. And it can be very sharp. Let me mention one of the other things too that I didn't, which is that when you're under a Uranian influence, astrologically speaking, you can be kind of hypercharged energetically. Like you can be really, like sometimes people will have difficulty sleeping during when those energies are most intense, when they're going through, say, a Uranus transit. People people feel like they're buzzing with energy. That is just typical, and even if you do, you are doing your groundings and stuff like that. It helps definitely to ground, but you can feel very sort of hyper energized, and that tends to wax and wane depending on how exact a Uranus transit is that you're going through. But I'm expressing that because I think we're going to be seeing those kinds of energies, that kind of energy on the collective level. So also communication can be very swift, and we will probably see. I've been thinking about, because for years, I would get up first thing in the morning and I would read multiple sources of news, from the New York Times to the Guardian to whatever, just to get a sense of what was going on in the world. And I have noticed that stuff has been happening really fast. Like it's almost like every day you would get up and something would be happening, often related to former President 45 of the U.S., and you'd just be like, what? Wait a minute. The day before that happened, and then today this is happening, and it went on, and it just seemed to never end. There was always something, like every friggin' day, something crazy was going on. That's very Uranian, that kind of energy. And, so again, when somebody has a personal Uranus transit, like they can have something happen, and then suddenly their life takes a turn and goes in a direction that they were not expecting. So just take all this stuff I'm saying and kind of apply it to the world, because that's what we're going to be seeing more and more rapidly, that kind of stuff happening. I guess that's it for now. I wasn't expecting to talk about this kind of stuff today or this morning, but I just woke up and I'm like, whoa. I had this huge download, and I was like, yeah, that's what's happening. This is what I need to express. So I have all these ideas, things that I thought I wanted to talk about, and then just stuff comes up sort of spontaneously. So none of this is planned or scripted, like I said. And anyway, hopefully this 25 minutes, like, what the hell? I thought I was going to do this for 10 or 15 minutes, but see, there's a time can go just in the blink of an eye. That's kind of a Uranian thing too, like really fast. So our sense of time can like literally get distorted. This is another sort of Uranian thing. So yeah, Uranus will challenge the status quo. Whatever the status quo is, will be challenged with this energy. There you go, another 26 minutes of blah, blah, blah. Hopefully this makes sense or is useful to someone. Oh, I need to tack on to make this video even longer. A little mea culpa, because a couple days ago I did a presentation about judging and condemning, and I said that I'm not a judgmental person. I don't really do that. And then not too long after, I realized, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I've been criticizing things socially and politically, and for years. I often post on Facebook about stuff that's happening in the world that I think is stupid. And I'm like, and I have been very critical of typically conservative forces in the world, because there's just been so much bullshit and nonsense that I find outrageous. And so I have complained and been very critical of a lot of these things for a long time. So yeah, I'm guilty of judging and condemning, even though I think I'm right. I've done a lot of it for many, many, many years. I've been very critical of stuff that I think is socially, environmentally, and politically regressive. So I'm guilty of that myself, and I admit that. Bye.